The Dempsey roll, the Gazelle punch, Phantom punch. These aren't just random boxing moves. They're legendary knockout techniques that destroyed careers and changed fights in seconds. Today, I'm breaking down every famous knockout move in boxing history, and trust me, techniques are absolutely devastating. Jack Dempsey, the Dempsey roll. Jack Dempsey's signature move was called the Dempsey roll. Basically, a controlled hurricane of punches that destroyed anyone who got caught in it. The Dempsey roll wasn't just one punch. Combination technique where Dempsey would bob and weave in a figure-8 pattern while throwing hooks from both hands. Duck low, come up with a left hook, duck again, then explode with a right hook. What made this move so devastating was the momentum. Dempsey would use his entire body weight behind each punch, generating incredible power from his legs and core. By the time his opponents realized what was happening, they were already getting hit by the third or fourth punch in the sequence. Dempsey perfected this technique by training with a speed bag in an unusual way. Instead of just hitting it straight on, move around it in circles, throwing hooks from different angles. This taught him to maintain his balance while generating power from awkward positions. The most famous example of the Dempsey roll came in his 1919 fight against Jess Willard. Dempsey dropped Willard 7 times in the first round using this technique, completely destroying a man who was 6 inches taller and 60 pounds heavier. But here's what made the Dempsey roll truly special. It was unpredictable. Most fighters throw combination straight line. Dempsey was coming at you from angles that didn't make sense. He couldn't see the punches coming because he was moving in a pattern that defied conventional boxing logic. The technique required incredible conditioning and timing. Dempsey had to maintain his balance while constantly moving and throwing power punch. One mistake in the sequence and he'd be off balance and vulnerable to counters. Modern fighters have tried to replicate the Dempsey roll, but none have mastered it like the original. The technique requires a specific body type, incredible conditioning, and years of practice to execute properly. Dempsey's roll became so famous that it was featured in movies, comic books, and even anime. Technique transcended boxing and became a part of popular culture. By the way, if you're enjoying these crazy martial arts stories, hit the subscribe button. I've got way more insane content like this coming. Now, moving on. Floyd Patterson, the Gazelle punch. Floyd Patterson's Gazelle punch was one of the most unique knockout techniques in boxing history. It looked like something out of a martial arts movie. Gazelle punch was essentially a leaping left hook where Patterson would jump forward while throwing the punch, using his momentum to generate devastating power. Literally leave his feet fly through the air while throwing the hook. Patterson developed this technique because of his size disadvantage. Smaller heavyweight, he needed to find ways to generate power against bigger opponents. Gazelle punch allowed him to use even athleticism to create knockout power. The technique worked because it was completely unexpected. Most boxers stay grounded when they throw punch. Patterson was launching himself through the air. Opponents had no idea how to defend against something they'd never seen before. Patterson's most famous Gazelle punch came in his 1956 fight against Archie Moore for the heavyweight title. Patterson leaped forward and caught Moore with a perfect left hook that dropped him for the count. 21 years old, Patterson became the youngest heavyweight champion in history. Gazelle punch wasn't just about power. About timing and distance. Patterson had to judge exactly when to leap and where his opponent would be when he landed the punch. One miscalculation and he'd miss completely and be off balance. The technique also required incredible leg strength and coordination. Patterson was essentially doing a standing broad jump while throwing a punch. It requires a level of athleticism fighters don't possess. What made Patterson's Gazelle punch so effective was that he could throw it from different ranges. Sometimes he'd leap from close range, short, compact hook. Other times he'd jump from farther away, covering more distance and generating more power. Punch became Patterson's signature move, but it was also risky. If missed or got countered while in the air, he'd be vulnerable. Technique required perfect timing and execution. Modern fighters occasionally attempt jumping punches, but none have mastered the Gazelle punch like Patterson. Technique requires a specific combination of speed, power, and athleticism that's rare in the heavyweight division. Kid Gavilan, the Bolo punch. Kid Gavilan's Bolo punch was named after the machete used by Cuban sugarcane workers, and it was just as devastating as named after. Bolo punch was an uppercut thrown in a wide, sweeping motion that started low and came up in an arc. Gavilan would drop his right hand almost to his waist, then bring it up in a circular motion, catching opponents with an uppercut they never saw coming. Gavilan developed this technique growing up in Cuba. He watched sugarcane work machete motion. He realized that the same biomechanics that made the machete effective could be applied to boxing. What made the Bolo punch so dangerous was the deception. Wide looping motion that looked slow and telegraphed. By the time opponents realized what was happening, the punch was already landing. An unusual angle made it almost impossible to defend again. Gavilan's most famous Bolo punch came in his fights with Sugar Ray Robinson. Even though Robinson considered the best pound-for-pound fighter in the world, Gavilan's Bolo punch gave him problems because it was so unconventional. The technique worked, violated every rule of conventional boxing. Trainers teach fighters to throw straight punch with their hands up, but Gavilan was dropping his hand low and throwing wide looping punches that somehow worked. Bolo punch also generated incredible power because Gavilan would entire body in the motion. The wide arc allowed him to put his shoulder, back, and core into the punch, creating knockout power from an unexpected angle. Technique was risky. Wide motion left Gavilan open to counters, and if he missed, he'd be completely out of position. The punch required perfect timing and the element of surprise to be effective. Gavilan's Bolo punch became so famous that other fighters tried to copy it. Most failed because they didn't understand the subtleties of the technique. It wasn't just about the motion, it was about the timing, setup, and the deception. The punch became part of boxing folklore and is still taught in some gyms today. though few fighters have the natural ability to execute it effectively like Gavilan did. Muhammad Ali, the Phantom Punch. Muhammad Ali's Phantom Punch is the most controversial knockout move in boxing history. To this day, people argue about whether it was real or fake. Phantom Punch happened in Ali's 95 rematch with Liston. First round, Ali threw what looked like a quick, short right hand that barely seemed to connect. Liston went down and stayed down. Fight was over. The punch was so fast and appeared so light that most people in the arena didn't even see it. Crowd booed, thinking the fight was fixed, and the photographers missed it because it happened so quick. But here's the thing about Ali's Phantom Punch. Might have been more real than people thought. Ali had incredibly fast hands for a heavyweight. He knew how to throw short, compact punches that generated surprising power. Technique behind the Phantom Punch: short, snapping right hand thrown from close range. Ali would shoulder and snap his wrist at the moment of impact, creating a whip-like effect that could generate knockout power over a very short distance. Ali had used similar punches throughout his career to knock out opponents. The 1965 knockout of Cleveland Williams came from a short right hand that looked almost identical to the punch that dropped Liston. What made Ali's short punches so effective was his incredible hand speed and timing. He could throw punches so quickly that opponents didn't have time to react or defend. Punches would land before they even realized they were coming. Controversy around the Phantom Punch overshadowed the technique itself. Whether the specific punch against Liston was legitimate or not, Ali's ability to generate knockout power from short distances was very real. Ali's short punching technique required incredible timing and precision. He had to catch opponents at exactly the right moment when they were off balance or moving into the punch. One fraction of a second off, the punch would have no effect. The Phantom Punch became a part of boxing legend, but it also damaged Ali's reputation. Many people believe the fight was fixed, which overshadowed his legitimate skills as a puncher. Ernie Shavers, the right hand of doom. Ernie Shavers had the most feared right hand in heavyweight history, so devastating that even Muhammad Ali said it was the hardest punch he ever took. Shavers' right hand wasn't technically complex, just a straight right hand thrown with perfect technique and incredible power. What made it special was the way Shavers could generate knockout power from any position or distance. The technique behind Shavers' right hand was textbook perfect. Plant his feet, rotate his hips, turn his shoulder over, and snap his wrist at the moment of impact. Every part of his body worked together to generate maximum power. Shavers' right hand was more than just technique, timing. He had an incredible ability to catch opponents when they were off balance or moving into the punch, multiplied the power exponentially. Shavers' most famous right hand came in his 1977 fight with Muhammad Ali. The second round, Shavers caught Ali with a perfect right hand that buckled Ali's knees and had him in serious trouble. Ali later said it was the closest he'd ever came to being knocked out. What made Shavers' right hand so dangerous was that he could throw it from anywhere, whether he was backing up, moving forward, or standing still. That right hand was always a threat. Opponents could never relax because they knew one mistake could end the fight. The power in Shavers' right hand was legendary. He knocked out 68 opponents during his career, and most of those knockouts came from his right hand. The punch was so powerful that it could knock out opponents even when it didn't land cleanly. Shavers' right hand technique was studied by boxing trainers around the world. The way he generated power from his legs, transferred it through his core, and delivered it through his fist was considered the perfect example of punching mechanic. What made Shavers truly special was his ability to set up the right hand. He'd use his jab and left hook to create openings that explode with the right hand when opponents expected it. The psychological effect of Shavers' right hand was almost as important as the physical power. Opponents would fight defensively because they were so afraid of getting caught with it, which made him easier targets. Thomas Hearns, the Motor City Cobra. Thomas Hearns' right hand was called the Motor City Cobra because it struck with the speed and venom of a snake, and it was responsible for some of the most spectacular knockouts in boxing history. Hearns' right hand was different from other power punchers because of his incredible reach and leverage. 6'1" with a 78-inch reach could generate tremendous power from distances where other fighters reached their opponent. The technique behind Hearns' right hand was based on perfect leverage and timing. Long arms like a whip, starting the punch from way back and accelerating through the target. The length of his arms allowed him to generate incredible speed and power. Hearns' most famous right hand came in his 1981 fight with Sugar Ray Leonard. In the 14th round, Hearns caught Leonard with a perfect right hand that dropped him and nearly ended the fight. The punch was thrown from such a long distance that Leonard never saw it coming. What made Hearns' right hand so effective was the element of surprise. Because of its reach, he could throw the punch from distances where opponents didn't expect to get hit. By the time they realized the punch was coming, it was too late to defend. The speed of Hearns' right hand was incredible. Despite the long looping motion, the punch was so fast that opponents couldn't react in time. The combination of reach, speed, and power made it almost impossible to defend against. Hearns' right hand technique required incredible timing and distance. He had to know exactly when to throw the punch and from what distance to maximize its effectiveness. One miscalculation, the punch would fall short or lose its power. The psychological effect of Hearns' right hand was enormous. Opponents would stay at long range to avoid it, which played right into Hearns' strengths as an outside follower of the body. Precision made it even more dangerous. The Motor City Cobra became one of the most feared punches in boxing. Hearns used it to knock out 48 opponents during his career. Technique still studied by fighters today as an example of how to maximize power and reach. Julian Jackson, the Hawk. Julian Jackson had the highest knockout in boxing history among world champions. Devastating power earned him the nickname the Hawk. Swooped down on opponents and finished them with one shot. Jackson's knockout power was legendary. Knocked out 49 of his 55 victories, 89% knockout rate against weak opponents either. Jackson was knocking out world champions and elite fighters with single punches. The technique behind Jackson's power was deceptively simple. Short, compact punches with perfect timing and incredible hand speed. Jackson didn't need to wind up or telegraph his punches. He could generate knockout power from close range with minimal motion. Jackson's most famous knockout came in his 1990 fight with Terry Norris. Jackson was losing the fight badly when he caught Norris with a short left hook in the second round that knocked him unconscious. Punch traveled maybe 6 inches, generated enough power to end the fight instantly. What made Jackson's punches so devastating? Incredible hand speed combined with perfect timing. Throw punches so quickly that opponents didn't have time to see him coming, let alone defend against them. Jackson's knockout power wasn't limited to one hand. He could knock opponents out with either hand and from any angle. His left hook particularly devastating, but his right handly dangerous. The technique behind Jackson's power was based on perfect weight transfer and timing. Plant his feet, rotate his hips, and snap his punch at incredible speed. A combination of technique and natural power made him one of the most feared punchers in boxing history. Jackson's knockouts were often so sudden and violent that they shocked even experienced boxing fans. Opponents would be winning the fight one second and unconscious the next. No warning that the knockout punch was coming. What made Jackson truly special was his ability to knock out opponents' losing fight. Yet incredible one-punch knockout power that could change the outcome of any fight at any moment. Psychological effect of Jackson's power was enormous. Opponents would fight cautious. They knew one mistake could end the fight. This defensive mindset often made them easier targets for Jackson's Gerald McClellan, G-Man. Gerald McClellan was known as the G-Man, and his knockout power was so devastating that he destroyed opponents with a combination of speed, power, and relentless aggression. It was unlike anything boxing had ever seen. McClellan's knockout technique was based on overwhelming opponents with volume and power. He'd throw combinations of hooks and uppercuts with incredible power. Breaking down opponents couldn't continue. The most impressive thing about McClellan's power was his ability to knock out opponents with body shots. His left hook to the body was particularly devastating. He used it to drop several opponents who'd never been hurt to the body. McClellan's most famous knockout came in his 1993 fight with Julian Jackson, in a battle between two of the hardest punchers in boxing history. McClellan caught Jackson with a perfect right hand in the 5th round that ended the fight instantly. Made McClellan's knockout power so special was his combination of speed and accuracy. Throw multiple power punches in rapid succession, one landing with pinpoint precision. Opponents couldn't defend against the volume of power shots coming at him. McClellan's technique was based on constant pressure and perfect timing. Walk opponents down, cutting off the ring, and then explode with combinations when they were trapped against the ropes or in corners. G-Man's left hook was particularly devastating. Throw it to the head or body with equal power. Opponents never knew which target he was aiming for until the punch landed. McClellan's knockout power was so feared that some opponents were beaten before they even entered the ring. Psychological warfare was almost as effective as his physical punching power. The most tragic aspect of McClellan's career was that his incredible knockout power was cut short by the brain damage he suffered in his 1990 fight with Nigel Benn, warrior who destroyed so many opponents, self-destroyed by the sport he dominated. Mike Tyson, the Peekaboo Destroyer. Mike Tyson's knockout power came from his unique peekaboo style, which allowed him to generate incredible power from close range while staying defensively responsible. Tyson's technique was based on constant head movement, explosive combinations, and perfect timing. He would slip punches while moving forward, then explode with uppercuts and hooks when he got inside his opponent's guard. Peekaboo style allowed Tyson to get close to taller opponents without taking damage, bob and weave under their punches, then come up with devastating uppercuts that would off the fights immediately. Tyson's most famous knockout technique was his left hook to the body, followed by a left uppercut to the head. This combination was so fast and powerful that opponents couldn't defend against both punches. What made Tyson's knockouts so spectacular was the way opponents would fall. His punches were so powerful and well-timed that fighters would often go down in dramatic fashion, at times appearing to be unconscious before they hit the canvas. Tyson's knockout power wasn't just about physical strength, it was about perfect technique and timing. He could generate incredible power from short distances because he used his entire body in every punch. The psychological effect of Tyson's knockout power was enormous. Many opponents were intimidated before the fight even started, which made him easier targets for his devastating combinations. Tyson's prime years featured some of the most spectacular knockouts in heavyweight history. His combination of speed, power, and technique created a perfect storm that destroyed anyone who got in his way. Peekaboo style required incredible conditioning and timing. Tyson had to maintain constant movement while looking for openings to explode with power punches. One mistake in timing and he'd be vulnerable to counters. Modern heavyweights have tried to replicate Tyson's style. None have mastered the combination of defense and offense that made his knockout power so devastating. Roberto Duran, Manos de Piedra. Roberto Duran's hands were called Manos de Piedra, hands of stone. His knockout power came from perfect technique, incredible hand hands and a killer instinct that was unmatched in boxing. Duran's knockout technique was based on short, compact punches thrown with incredible accuracy and timing. Generate knockout power from close range with minimal windup, making his punches almost impossible to see coming. What made Duran's punches so devastating was his ability to throw them from awkward angles. He could knock out opponents with hooks, uppercuts, and even straight punches, all thrown from positions where other fighters couldn't generate power. Duran's most famous knockout technique was his left hook to the body. He would work the body throughout the fight, breaking down opponents until they dropped their guard, then finish them with a hook to the liver or solar plexus. The technique behind Duran's power was based on perfect weight transfer and timing. Despite being a smaller fighter, he could generate incredible power by using his legs, hips, and shoulders in perfect coordination. Duran's knockout power wasn't limited to one weight class. He knocked out opponents as a lightweight, welterweight, and even as a middleweight, proving that his technique could generate power regardless of his size. What made Duran truly special was his ability to set up his knockout punches. He would use his jab and movement to create openings, then explode with power shots when opponents least expected them. Duran's hands were so fast that opponents often didn't realize they'd been hit until they were already falling. His combinations were thrown with such speed and precision that they looked like one continuous motion. The psychological effect of Duran's knockout power was significant. Opponents knew they were in for a war, and the constant threat of his power shots made them fight more defensively. Duran's knockout technique is still studied by fighters today as an example of how to generate maximum power from minimal motion. His ability to knock out opponents with short punches is considered one of the greatest skills in boxing history. Alexis Arguello, the explosive thin man. Alexis Arguello was known as the Explosion Man, and despite his lean frame, he possessed knockout power that was absolutely devastating across 3 different weight classes. Arguello's knockout technique was based on perfect timing and leverage. He'd use his long reach to keep opponents at distance, then explode with straight right hands and left hooks when they tried to get inside. What made Arguello's power so special was his ability to knock out opponent punches. He didn't need to wear opponents down with volume. One perfectly timed shot was often enough to end the fight. Arguello's most famous knockout technique was his straight right hand. Throw it with perfect form, using his entire body to generate power while maintaining perfect balance and accuracy. The technique behind Arguello's power was textbook perfect. Plant his feet, rotate his hips, turn his shoulder over, and follow completely. The element of proper punching mechanics was present in his technique. Arguello's knockout power was so consistent that he knocked out opponents in different weight classes. This proved that his power wasn't just about size or strength, about perfect technique and timing. What made Arguello's knockout so impressive was the way he fights when opponents thought they were safe. He could knock out fighters from long range with his straight punches, close range with his hook. Arguello's left hook was particularly devastating. He could throw it to the head or body with equal power. The punch was so fast that opponents rarely saw it coming. The psychological effect of Arguello's power was enormous. Opponents would fight cautious. They knew one mistake could end the fight instantly. Defensive mindset often made them easier target. Arguello's knockout technique is still considered one of the most technically perfect examples of punching power in boxing history. His ability to generate knockout power while maintaining perfect form is studied by fighters and trainers around the world. If you enjoyed this video, I'm going to be posting a lot more content like this. Greatly appreciate it if you could subscribe. Thanks for watching.